We are going to be talking about personal branding. You will see recording down here. We are recording from the back of the room for students who are unable to join us, and this is a backup, and I'm sure this will be available to you all later. I'm also recording exactly what's on the screen, which may make it easier for us to edit and provide information. We do have low light, and it is a little bit difficult if you've ever tried to join by a live stream or view the recording to kind of see everything that's going on. So this just gives us lots of options. That being said, the recording for the computer is ambient noise. So they will be able to hear you. We can scrub it out on the recording, but if anyone's able to join the WebEx meeting that's running right now, this is how they're going to be joining instead of live stream. So if we can, please kind of be aware of the noise level. So today we're going to cover off on the idea of personal branding, what that means, what that does for you. And my first question, I guess, for the group, as we get started and we're still trying to get some people situated, is how many of you all are familiar with the concept of personal branding? From where and in what way?
A business class.
So we're talking about it officially in our coursework now. It's included in business classes. Where else? Who in here is familiar with Miley Cyrus? I know. You don't want to admit it, and it's a horrible thing that we lived through. So who remembers her as Hannah Montana? Massive personal brand shift, right? We had the Disney princess, Hannah Montana, very wholesome. She decides that she is an adult, she can't do that little girl brand anymore, and so she changes her brand radically. All of that is controlled, a lot of that is chosen. I might not agree with her choices, but she does it well. A total rebrand. And some of that's professional, but some of that's personal as well. I'm going to be addressing a high level of personal branding, what it is, how it works, and something that will help get you started on writing a personal brand statement, which will kind of focus your efforts, especially through your professional networks, on how you want to be perceived by potential employers or colleagues. And that's really where we're going to stick, with how to get that started. There are some great resources that have already been recorded and already been presented. One, Dr. Steve Marshall from Mass Communications, and the LinkedIn. I'm not going to try to match that. Next time I'm presenting before him, not after. But there are some great resources that we can make sure that you have access to in terms of specific social media and how to activate those networks and leverage them and represent yourself as we do that. I did have the foresight to make a presentation that's about 35 to 40 minutes long, so we can keep track of respecting your time and making sure that we have time for discussion if you choose. So are we doing kind of okay? Are we getting there?
I mean, I've got no response.
Well, we'll hope that they join in. If not, we will definitely make sure that the recording is available as quickly as possible. And we are going to dive right in. So when we're talking about branding in a corporate and marketing sense, we're talking about the logo and the colors and the look. But what that all means, really, is a promise. The promise that Coca-Cola makes to you when you see their red and logo stuff on the side of the can. The promise that McDonald's is making to you when you see the golden arches. It's a set of expectations, of memories and stories, and all of that together gives you an impression about that product or business. That impression is their brand. It's much more than a mark or a logo or the specific colors that they're using. It's how you feel about them that is where their brand has value, especially for them. This definition is a great one because it speaks not to the technicality of how you go about designing a logo and the product placement and all of those other things, but it really, really speaks to how our perceptions and our feelings about a product determine what the brand is and how they, on their side, craft that. Seth Godin is an author, entrepreneur, and marketer. He kind of dominates as far as a personal brand goes. in the space of online communication and blogging, ebooks, and marketing in the digital era. So Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, says your personal brand is what people say behind your back. How people talk about you when you are not in the room is what your brand is. It's not what they say to your face. We as human beings and social creatures are very nice most of the time, and we will nod and smile and tell you what you want to hear. We are not likely to tell you explicitly exactly what we think about you. And for any of you that have had to review people in a job or partners in group work for a class, when you're asked how well did this person work with you, were you nicer than you thought? The first thing that came to mind was not what went down on paper, was it? We have a tendency to be very, very nice. We are social creatures. We want acceptance. And what people say about you, not to you, but how they would describe you to another is really what your personal brand is. And some people might say, but I don't have a brand. And to that I say, actually you do. You just might not be having a brand on purpose. You might not be in control of it yet. But you absolutely have a brand. The people who know you have a certain impression of you. If you exist anywhere on the internet, which is hard to do even if you're not on social media, there is an impression of you that other people can get. And those impressions, those memories and those feelings, in the very same way we talked about the Coca-Cola, the McDonald's branding, the impression of you, however someone gets it, is your brand. Or to put it another way, your online personal brand is what Google thinks you are. And that's really, really important, because not a lot of people understand that when you Google yourself, the results that are displayed are similar to the results that other people would see if they type in your name. And 85% of people have Googled someone. 43% of people say they've Googled a potential romantic partner, which means that somewhere around 57% of people are lying, because I think that everybody in this digital age is Googling. So if you're going to do business, if you're going to put yourself in an intimate situation with someone, why not Google them? See if the first result that comes back is not America's Most Wanted. Good dating advice. You didn't know you were giving that today, did you? There's also the same number of people who say that they Googled a political candidate. So people are actively seeking out information, and employers are doing the same. And that's the biggest thing on this slide right here. 80% of employers Google potential hires. The results that come up when your name is searched is your personal brand, no matter what your LinkedIn profile looks like specifically. This is what they find. This is what they see, and this is what creates their impression of you as a prospective employee. So this is really hard to see, but this is what happens when you Google me. I'm very fortunate in that I have a unique name and not very many enemies yet. So all of this is the first 2 pages of search results. And I'm going to kind of walk you through this quickly because I know you can't see, but that's a lot of information for just 2 pages. So at the very top we have the images. The third image over, I don't even know what that is. But someone's perception of me might be a little skewed. Hopefully it'll be a potential romantic partner. I think it's a pin for Pinterest, which means when you like an image on Facebook, when you repin a pin on Pinterest, when you're sharing information like that, it shows up in your images when you Google your name. So be very, very careful about the photos you're tagged in. You do have a privacy setting. Rule number 1, know thy privacy settings. That prevents tagging without your permission. That way you don't have images that pop up of that, you know, it was a really good reason to celebrate, but that might not be what you want on your first page of your Google results. We might want to manage how those photos are used and shown. So my LinkedIn profile, this is a similar picture I use for all of my profiles, and we'll get to consistency in visual consistency in a few minutes. A random picture, I have no idea what it is, but it says something probably not true about me. Then my Twitter account, my LinkedIn account, my Instagram photos, Spokeo people search. I have no control over what content is in Spokeo. Spokeo is one of those white pages type listing that provides information about your address or whatever, and I think people can spend like $100 and get my phone number, which is a little terrifying, but there's not much I can do about it. My Vine, which I only think I have one video, and it was from Bristol Rhythm and Roots Reunion about 2 years ago. I'm not an active Vine user, and that is my, what is that, my 5th result? Underneath that, another Pinterest. And then I have a personal website. It comes underneath all of my social media. And the reason why is Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, and all of those sites get an extraordinary amount of traffic. Google recognizes them for that. The algorithm is set to favor that. And it's also looking for my name or keywords associated with me. So my, for example, my Facebook URL to my personal page is indicative of my name, which is why it shows up immediately. Have a question?
Yeah, do you know what determines the order in which they show up? Is it
yes, it's Google's algorithm. And beyond that, no, that's kept a very, very closely kept secret. I will tell you, and I do have SEO in here a little bit, but as soon as it came up, we'll go ahead and kind of explore it. Search engine optimization is something that a lot of websites and companies do to improve their search engine rankings. It's something you can do for yourself as well. Google tends to favor strong keywords that are closely matched and URLs, which is why one of my recommendations is, even if you don't build a website, even if it's a static image, buy your name. Buy your name. Because if there are something like, and on the second page I've got Amazon Kindle quotes, and I've got my Spotify playlist, and even an article I wrote for the East Tennessean when I was an undergrad student is still on here. It stays forever. But if there was something negative, the only way I can push the negative results down is to put better ranking results on top of them. It's extremely difficult to get rid of information on the internet. So we want to be careful what ends up there, and if there are things we want to push to the second or third page, because usually the first and second page is where people spend most of their time, we have to have things that push them down. Another thing that the algorithm looks for is consistently updated content, which is another reason why Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter seem to rank so highly, because we're consistently updating that information associated with us. So having a keyword in the URL that matches, for example, your name or your username, anywhere you have to log into that's public has your name associated with the URL. And Google will just pull that right up. It's a very sophisticated algorithm that changes all the time, which is good because that means nobody can really claim to be an expert and I get to keep my edge. So here are these are some of the things that pop up about me, including all of my information in terms of social media. Now, if you click on any of these links, you will see whatever my privacy settings allow you to see. Know thy privacy settings. I might not want you as my potential employer or as a potential romantic partner to have access to certain behaviors or information, or to see pictures of my children as soon as you log in. I certainly don't want an errant post or some sort of grumbling that I've done on my Facebook to show up publicly for you to get the impression that I'm cranky and hard to please. I may be, but I'm trying to manage the perception. And that's the difference. Their perception of you has nothing to do with what you are unless you can control it and present yourself in an accurate and authentic way. That being said, their perception of you is not something you can manipulate into something that you're not, because that's hard to maintain over time. So you want it to accurately reflect you, and you still want to be able to emphasize the good and maybe leave the pictures of the party from last weekend not tagged somewhere else. Okay, so moving on. Personal branding is about purposeful building and management of your online and offline reputation. We're focusing mainly on online today because your offline reputation comes from your interactions with human beings. That's kind of beyond the scope of the talk today. But you do have a brand, what people say behind your back, and your online brand is what Google says about you. So that's great, but how do we go about managing our online brand? You might think that it is a little bit more convenient for me having a really weird last name, not a lot of competition. There was nobody but me when I pulled that up. But for somebody with a more common name or that doesn't have all of those social media, you do this for a living, what do we do? And the first thing is going to be to discover your brand statement. Then you're going to develop a strategy, and this does not have to be like 4 pages of a business plan. This just has to get you to the point where you're acting on purpose and you're creating a consistent message. And then you're going to match your behavior to your goal. Those are really the 3 elements of doing almost anything, but certainly with personal branding. Now notice I said we're discovering and not inventing our brand statement. Your brand statement is an authentic reflection of who you are and who you aspire to be and what you're working toward. It's short, it's 1 to 2 sentences, and I actually have a couple of little things that we'll get into in just a second that will help narrow some of that down and give you some ideas. If I am in your way, just start shooing me like a fly and I'll start doing the jig and I'm gonna go over here for a minute. So who are you? And this seems like a really easy question, but how many of you tried to fill out the About section on any social media profile? And you get down to, I like pina coladas and getting caught in the rain. That's all I've got. So the question is, who are you? Ask other people. You have a brand already. Now, we're not looking for the things that they'll say behind your back and not to your face in a negative way, but for people you trust, colleagues, supervisors, professors, whomever that may be, say, what do you think my strengths are? What value do I provide that seems uncommon? Within this group, how do I fit in and what is my specific skill set? And if you ask enough people about that, you'll see themes recurring of what people depend on you for. About the things that you may take for granted because you say, of course I would do that, but not everybody does it, and not everybody does it just like you. And ultimately, keep in mind, it has to be authentic. If you are not a good listener, I am working so hard on being a good listener. If you haven't noticed, I like to talk. I really do work very hard, and have been, at slowing myself down, at really hearing and listening for understanding, not just to take my turn to talk. I cannot put that I am a good listener in my brand statement. It's just not really one of my strengths. So I do want to be authentic and say that maybe I'm not afraid to speak in public. That's very, very true. I can make that a positive, but I can't say something that's untrue. You'll get found out, and that ruins your personal brand because your brand is your reputation, and that's a lack of trust. All right, so what do you do? Job title, skill sets, education, volunteer experiences. What buckets do those fit in? What specifically are they? I do marketing. I do communications. I do analytics. I do leadership. I do reading, lots and lots of reading. It's part of my personal brand. Most of what goes up on Facebook is book related. That's what I do. I'm a writer. I write really bad poetry. Everything else I'm pretty good at. So what kind of things can you put on your list? You can tailor this depending on what you need. If we're in a maintenance period of personal brand management, you're not actively looking for employment, you're not actively pursuing a specific goal with your brand equity, the value you have, then it can be a little loose. If you're seeking a professional position, this might gear towards that specific job title or function. You kind of get to pick that depending on what your goal is. What are you trying to use social media for? And what makes you unique? What are you passionate about? What are your core values? I know that There are some people I know that are punctual to a point where it almost gives them panic attacks if they think they're going to be late. Some people are much more laissez-faire with time. And not good, bad, and different. It's not about a value judgment, but it's about what are your values. If you value the fact that you're an on-time person, maybe that dependability, the reliability, and that punctuality becomes part of your brand statement because it shows a stability of behavior and perhaps of character. And what's your personality? Because all of this sounds really, really heavy. And it's not that you have to put the tie all the way up and you can't do anything fun on social media. You get to have your personality. But what is it? I'm a little bit of a nerd and a goofball. That's part of my personality. I'm not going to change that. Whatever that third picture was, that's not part of my personality, which makes it funny if you know me. So what is your personality? Are you quiet and reserved? How does that come through? Are you silly? Are you active? What things make you unique in terms of how you approach your life and the way that comes across to other people? So, brand statement discovery. To identify 3 or 4 keywords that describe kind of your essential qualities, and I'm so right in your way, aren't I? Answer the questions or finish the statement. I know I'm in my element when. When do you feel most comfortable? Have any of you all heard of the idea of flow? The idea that you get to a certain nice balance of focus and attention and you lose track of time. When you've been drawing for an hour or you're reading or you're writing and you're so totally absorbed. And how many of you have done tasks where you're like, I've only been doing this for 15 minutes? Really? Are we there yet? Every time I'm on a treadmill? But there are times when I hit that flow and I can do what I'm doing all day. And I don't feel tired afterwards. I feel like I've accomplished something. And I feel energized and good. I'm in my element. Whatever I'm doing at that moment is something that I'm passionate about, something that I feel like I'm good at, and that's where my element is. People recognize my expertise in. What do people ask you to help them with? This is a good question to ask your professors or your supervisors or your group members or your friends, anyone who would be honest with you. What kind of advice do they come to you for? What kind of help do they request? Is it your clarity of thinking? Is it your empathy? Specifically, what are you an expert in? People ask me quite often about social media management. That might not necessarily make me an expert, but that does seem to make me a fairly reputable and trusted source because that is their perception of me. And people comment on my ability to. It's almost the same question, but a little different spin. But answering these, or finishing these 3 sentences, kind of gives you a couple of keywords of what your personal brand is kind of built around. This is a little bit longer. This would be totally fun for Mad Libs. Who remembers this? I use my noun and noun for verb. So what things, I use my creativity and insight for helping people achieve their marketing objectives. Known for blank, I do this using this. So by structuring some of these sentences, you can kind of get to the core of what it is that you do, especially in a professional sense. The core of what it is that you do, how the value you provide, and the ways in which you provide it. And this essentially becomes the brand statement. The way that you say these things can reflect your personality. And I have a couple of examples that we're going to go through quickly. I'm going to break the rule and read the slide just so we have it on audio. And just because that's a lot to read on the slide, it's just another rule, I broke it. Go ahead. Through my intuition and genuine concern for and interest in others, I build long-lasting, fruitful relationships with my team, my business partners, and clients to drive consistent, recurring revenue for my company. It's a sample from a business owner. Not real fun, not real edgy, but he's a business owner. That fits him. He's or she is invested in relationships and development. You get a sense of what that person is out to achieve. I use my quirky nature, confident, and passion for fun to motivate creative teams and ad agencies and marketing departments to work together more effectively to drive greater value for their organization. So this is a coach, consultant, trainer, is the person who would come in, have a little bit of fun, shake things up, and kind of break the monotony. You can kind of see what the values are. Novelty, that fun, lighthearted, quirky type of personality. Specific people, these are real brand statements that people have shared. I help people to clear their head trash and find their mojo. And once they've found their mojo, I help them set it on fire. What kind of person do you picture when you hear that statement? Because honestly, her name's Alexia, so we know that it's a female. I picture someone about this tall with kind of a short, spiky haircut that is just all over the place excited and probably one of the nicest people you ever meet. She's your personal cheerleader. I kind of get an image of what this person might be like. And even if physically they don't match that image, that's still the image I have of them. I use my enthusiasm, forward thinking, and passion for self-direction to help clients identify their uniqueness and use it to take control of their lives and careers. These very closely match those fill in the blanks. What key traits do you have? How do you leverage them, and for what purpose? And that kind of becomes the big question, because almost everything that you'll do in terms of personal branding on social media will revolve around this. What kind of content are you sharing? What kind of things are you posting? If you're gonna help people find their mojo and light it on fire, please don't post negative things on Facebook. That's a brand inconsistency. So all of what you do that is going to be visible to the public matches this. This is your promise. Okay, so now that we know that, you do need to think about your audience. Who are you wanting to attract the attention of? Is it potential employers? Are you in a maintenance phase and it's just communicating with colleagues? What is your goal? Who are you talking to, really? And what do you want to be known for? You have to keep that in mind. Having just created your brand statement, you know what is you want to be known for. How does what you put out there reflect that value? How is the content you provide fulfilling your brand promise? So the brand strategy then becomes moving in the direction of your goal. You know who your audience is, you know who you are, you know if you're looking for a job, if you're looking to network, if you're a freelancer and you're looking to build clientele. Whatever that goal is, move in that direction with the content that you share, with how frequently you're engaged and available, how open you are to making new connections, and ensure that your online presence always matches your branding statement. That is how you can create consistency in a very chaotic digital world, and that is how you build credibility and trust among people who don't know you but are looking for you. Consistency, messaging, tone, and images. I've heard a lot of people say that on LinkedIn you should use a professional headshot. I agree that on LinkedIn you should not use a selfie. Any picture of you where that we can see you holding your phone in the reflection of the bathroom mirror. However, I'm not a stickler for that headshot rule. I have a fairly close-in headshot. It was one of the first ones we saw when we looked at the Google search results that I use for Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. I have a consistency of imagery. It's not a hard and fast rule. There is no absolute. LinkedIn, if you're actively looking for a job, might be the perfect time to put on a professional headshot. And that might be too formal for your other forms of social media. Because I work in social media and all of my connections seem to overlap anyway, I just have the same picture. It's not a professional headshot, but it's still a headshot that doesn't have other people and a lot of chaos. It's still something that I don't mind representing me in a professional space. If you are going to use different pictures, maybe limit them depending on use. Facebook and Twitter, you might have one profile image. LinkedIn, you may have another. You can kind of designate which spaces are more for personal use and professional use. but a different picture on every site doesn't create consistency for you. You do want to be recognizable if you're wanting people to look for you. If you're really managing your brand and wanting to tie all of that in together, people need to know that they're the same person they were looking at if they were over here. And don't be any of these people. We even gave them names. Negative Nancy, Whiny Whitney, Downer Doug, Show Off Sean, Gullible Gus, or Paranoid Percy. I agree with you that there are probably more things going on than anybody wants us to know. I would love to get together with you over coffee and discuss conspiracy theories. Please don't put them on Facebook. It's really hard in context to determine the veracity of certain things or how serious you are about them. And as a prospective employer, if you went to a Facebook site and saw, because they didn't follow the first rule of privacy settings, and you saw all these conspiracy theories, what would you think of that potential employee and how it would be to work with them day to day? This person's going to think everybody in the office is out to get them. They're going to be in my office twice a week. I'm going to be accused of something, and I don't know if I want this. At the same time, sharing information that is not accurate. Snopes is your friend, Snopes.com. Anytime something questionable comes up, it probably exists somewhere else, and it will tell you whether it's an urban legend or if it's something that, verify it. If you're not sure, verify it before you repost it, because that does hurt your credibility in terms of just what you know. Stay away from hot topics if you can. I don't discuss religion, politics, vaccinations, abortions, or anything like that in a digital space. I'm a big fan of the First Amendment. But here's the thing. You have to be careful of what you say. Is anybody familiar with Has Justine Landed Yet? Oh, I love telling the story. Justine Sacco is a global PR head. She's the PR person for an international company. You would think she would know better. She was born in Johannesburg. I think her father worked for the government or something. So she was actually going home. Their family still didn't live there, or they weren't living there at the time, but she was visiting someplace where she grew up. Before she got on her 11-hour international flight, she sent this tweet. Going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS. Just kidding, I'm white. She was trying to make a joke. She sent that tweet. She got on the plane and for 11 hours was up in the air, out of touch with the whole digital everything. It took one retweet from someone at the Daily Beast, or maybe it was Gawker. They both got involved at some point. And it trended for 11 hours, and we ended up with a hashtag, Has Justine Landed Yet? There were 1.3 million tweets within about 15 minutes of it going viral. People were asking who's going to be on the ground to watch her get off the plane. People were asking the company where the response was. There were internet memes. One does not simply tweet that and get on a plane. All within minutes. She is up in the air for 11 hours. People are tracking her flight. There were links to the flight tracker. This became like, to watch this unfold in real time was just, it was so tragic and it was painful. So she lands on the tarmac. Could you imagine what it was like to turn on her phone? For all the time she was mentioned and retweeted and her boss calling her, which I'm sure happened. She was fired before she got on the ground. She's completely disappeared. As soon as she landed, within that hour, she was gone from social media. But that tweet is never going away. You can search for Has Justine Landed Yet? You can search for her name. And all of it is just coverage. She has no personal brand that's worth anything now. Because of a flippant tweet, she was trying to be funny, and it's just not funny. Here's what one person said. I remember when you could be utterly stupid without the whole world finding out. And he said that in response to the Justine Sacco speech. We don't live in that world anymore. If you're going to put stuff out on social media, you can fail very publicly. And this happens over and over and over again. How many times have we watched somebody have to retract a tweet where that was in bad taste, mea culpa? It's not worth it, and it's highly offensive. An excellent case study in kind of what not to do. I highly recommend you look it out. I will say that the highlight of watching that unfold live for me was someone took Has Justine Landed Yet, bought the URL, and redirected it to an AIDS donation for charity. Mm-hmm. They raised $3 million that week, which is more than they raised like the previous 8 months combined. So somebody was on top of using that for a good cause. So beware of how you share your beliefs, your opinions. Beware of being funny and clever. Not everyone can do it right. But don't be afraid to show your personality. There is a line there. If you're not sure of it, err on the side of boring. If you are comfortable with your personality and who you are, then go nuts, but not too nuts. We know what's appropriate and what's not, but think before you post. Because for all the people who will say, but it's my social media, it's my space. Well, absolutely. And you have the freedom to say whatever you want. God bless America. You don't have the freedom for me not to think you're an idiot, because that's my freedom. People will judge you. People judge you all the time, especially your prospective employers. Don't say anything on social media that you wouldn't want printed in a newspaper with your picture beside. It's permanent, it is media, and it will come up if somebody searches your name. Seriously, search for Justine Sacco, S-A-C-C-O, and see how quickly that could go down. So as you're deploying your brand, you've got social media. This is where we kind of go through, and if there are things you want to push off of that first page so you control the message, these are ways to do it. Social media accounts of varying types. Vine is up there. That bothers me because I'm not actually active. I don't do much on Instagram either. It would be better for me, I think, if the ones that showed up were the ones I'm actually active in. Might have to work on that. But social media accounts of all types will rank highly. Blogs, even if you don't buy the domain name, if it's wordpress.com/yourname, it's still your name and a URL. It's also an excellent avenue for you to express opinions that won't have you lynched publicly, or display expertise. If you have one of those things that people come to you for advice for, something you're passionate about, hobbies, whatever, it does display your writing skills, it does show your personality. It's a great way to go. Audio and video through a YouTube channel, even if it's not your content, even if it's just stuff that you like and you curate it, it's a great way to go. Also has your name and the URL. Personal website, seriously, by your name if you can. You don't have to have web content per se up there. It could be one image that says, so glad you're interested, look for me on LinkedIn. It could just point them to somewhere else, but at least you own your name. And I pointed us back to the Google search results. Those 2 pages of mine, you should own the results for your name. If you have a common name, you're going to see someone else there. But if you use a longer keyword, if I used Joe Smith, Johnson City, it's probably going to narrow me down a little bit more. So try that, or specific affiliations, and you'll kind of get an idea of what's out there about you. Think of how other people might search you. But you really want to own the results on those pages. But everything that else you do on the internet is what feeds those pages. So you kind of have to manage your brand all over the place and every time you make an interaction. All right. Kind of covered off those at the same time. So be on purpose. We want to think before we post. We want to keep our brand promise in mind. Be on message by following up with those things that we said we value, by displaying those values in our personality actively. Be aware of the impression that you make when you post things. If Justine Sacco had looked down at her phone and said, I know that this is a joke. My friends might know that this is a joke. I'm a horrible person. But if somebody who doesn't know me saw this, would they find it humorous? She would have deleted it before she sent it. It was a moment of stupidity. So try to be aware and try to make sure that you're aware of the impression that you make if someone who's a stranger to you sees what you're doing, because that's ultimately what this is about. As people are looking for you, especially in your professional career, these are going to be people who don't know you well enough to see what nuances of personality or how the tone might have been affected if you said it. These are people who are judging you based exactly on what they've seen and that you've put out. And monitor and modify as needed. There is no finish line. If you find yourself tagged in a photo and you think, I don't know that I would want the person I'm interviewing with next week to see that, contact the person and say, hey, would you mind moving that tag? Set your privacy settings to where no tags can really be added or displayed without your permission. And make sure people aren't posting to your Facebook wall without your permission, and put new content that's appropriate out there to keep your search results for your social media current and up at the top of your list. So that's a lot, but the big takeaways are that you already have a personal brand. You may not be managing it, you may not be doing it on purpose, but you have one. And it's whatever Google thinks you are. That is your online brand. The goal is to change what Google thinks of you to bring it in line with the personal brand that you want, which is an authentic reflection of who you are as your best self. This is what I want to be known for. This is the reputation I want to have. These are the types of relationships I want to build. These are the things that I'm good at. You do that through your own online spaces, anything that has your URL in it, or your name or keyword in the URL. You cannot get away from things like Spokeo. If there is a news article out there that mentions you, it might pop in there too. A lot of that has to do with offline management though. So what you can control is typically your owned media, and that's the best place to start. And post content that matches your brand, even if you consider LinkedIn your professional profile and Facebook your personal profile. There is no such thing. There is no such thing. Don't post anything on Facebook you wouldn't want brought up in an interview, because it is open in that way. Because looking at you as a holistic person, your prospective employer is going to say, well, he looks great on LinkedIn. I don't know what those pictures are about on Facebook. It's a holistic view. So make sure that everything on every channel that you're on matches that impression that you want to give, because the perception of you that others have are your brand. That's what you're managing, how people perceive you. Questions, comments, suggestions? I explained it so good, nobody has any questions. I am awesome. All right, I am on LinkedIn, I am on Facebook, I am on Twitter, apparently I'm on Vine. Feel free to connect with me in any way. I'm going to probably go back to the main screen here. You can write down my name if you want to. It's kind of a beast. I'm the Director of Marketing for Online Programs here at ETSU. If there's anything that I can do for you, please feel free to let me know. I'd be happy to connect with any of you. Yes, gentleman in the back.
Not a question, but a comment. Your recommendation to purchase the domain name that is your name.
Yes.
I think it's a great recommendation, and I just wanted to append specific to that in case anybody wants to know. An easy way to do that is to go to namecheap.com.
Okay.
They're a very cheap registrar. There are lots of different registrars on the internet to purchase a domain name from.
So
this is one of the cheaper ones. It costs less than a Netflix subscription, $6 to $7 a year. And if you do that, another good idea is to also purchase Whois protection. which will prevent people from publicly finding out who purchased the domain.
Okay, I'm gonna repeat that real quick because I am hooked to the mic and you're kind of far away.
Yeah, please do.
The specific recommendation that we had was a kind of an upvote, using the social media verbiage, for the idea of purchasing your name as a domain name. And the recommendation was Namecheap. Is it .com or .org? .com. As an employee of the university, I make absolutely zero endorsements on my own part. Namecheap.com was what came from the suggestion just given to me, with the addition of who is protection, which protects your registration status and your information to where it can't be mined. Those are things that you can look for online. And it was also interesting to note that to buy your domain name for a year is less than 1 month, really, of your Netflix subscription. I think it's $12 for a year most often. That's not the hosting service. If you actually want to build out a professional website, you're going to pay for hosting, which is a little different. I suggest you look into that. But just for purchasing the domain and having just that one static image, $12 a year, and it keeps somebody from, I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often. Somebody gets mad at somebody and puts up a website that would be really difficult to take down. To protect yourself from, I'm planning on making enemies next week. I've already got my name, so. All right, what do we have? What else? All right.
So let's give a round of applause for that.